broadcasting live on the UnitedWest.org AM radio network and simulcasting on DirecTV, iHeartRadio, Roku, and the World Wide Web. This is Enemies of the State with Tom Trento.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is not Tom Trento.
Yeah,
but
you're
this
not Tom Trento. You're a lot better looking at Tom
This
Trento.
is Enemies of the State, and today it's with Billy and Karen Vaughn. And we want to say a special welcome and thank you to everybody listening online on iHeartRadio, and especially those listening on 740 AM, sunny Boca Raton, WSRV here in beautiful, sunny Florida.
SRB, not V.
I thought you said, sorry. WSRB in sunny South Florida.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Hey, we just wanted to start the show today by recapping a couple things that have happened recently and talking about something that's happening in the very near future. First, I want to give a special shout out to the ladies that attend the Believe With Me seminars with Leette Reback. I believe we have a picture of Leette and David, her husband, in Jupiter, Florida. If you've got that, you can pop that up.
Okay.
Leette has started a ministry called Believe With Me, and it is something precious and dear to my heart because what she does is she ministers to young mothers across this country, teaching them how to raise families who will make an impact on the future of our nation. And that's the wrong picture.
Oh, darn. I'll throw up the right one. Go ahead.
Mark, I'm telling you, you just can't.
Can't trust a hired helper.
I'm telling you, it's terrible. Okay, now you gave away our special guest. There she is. There's Leette Reback and her husband David. They live in Jupiter, Florida, and like I said, they're making a tremendous impact on this world. And you know, each of us have our own special circumstances that kind of launch us sometimes into the public domain or launch us into doing something that's a little different than what most other people do. And for Leette and David, I have another picture. What launched them onto this public stage of raising families, empowered families that can impact the nation, is they have 15 children.
How many?
15.
15. 15.
And you also have a picture of Billy and I. We had an amazing dinner with this family. Look at those kids. It is the most wonderful family. I mean, they're just incredible people, and they're just really making an impact on the country. So I just wanted to highlight that. I spent last night with about 50 women from the Believe With Me organization last night down in Jupiter. Had a phenomenal time.
Is this a Brady Bunch family or one?
They are amazing. Seriously.
One family? It's not a joint family.
It is not a joint. This is
one mother.
One family, one mother, one father.
One dad, yep.
Oh, wow.
15 kids, 15 amazing kids. And
wow.
Billy, I have to tell you, Billy, the girls requested you last night to come down and do the next Believe With Me session. They wanted you to come down and talk about politics and world events. Right? The girls in that family love Billy Vaughn. Go figure. I mean, he's pretty handsome. For those of you on the radio, I'm sorry you can't see him, but he's pretty
That's all right. You can recognize this mug anywhere.
Anyway, I just wanted to highlight one other thing before we get to our special guests and what today's show is going to be about. But, I've been working for quite some time with an organization called Concerned Veterans for America. For about a year and a half now, I've been part of that team. And this will be the fourth year that Concerned Veterans for America puts on a nationwide tour. It gets bigger and better every year. This will be my third year participating in the tour, and we are so excited. This year, we are going to have special guests join us on our tour stops like Chuck Norris.
Wow.
And you know what they say about Chuck Norris. I mean, I can't even think of, what are some of those jokes about Chuck Norris? You know, when Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, he had 4 missed calls from Chuck Norris. So we're having Chuck Norris join us on the tour. We're going to have Colonel Allen West join us on the tour. Oliver North will be joining us on the tour.
I just got to say, though, Chuck Norris wears Jack Bauer underwear.
You know, we've got some amazing people, but then the regulars on the tour stop is yours truly, Karen Vaughn. I speak as a Gold Star mother and speak in that capacity of, you know, making sure that America keeps in mind the sacrifice that's been made on its behalf, and that American citizens rise up and protect and defend what so many have given their lives to protect and defend for us. So I speak in that capacity. We also have Army Ranger and New York Times best-selling author Sean Parnell. He wrote Outlaw Platoon. Amazing man, amazing story. He shares the story of what happened in the battle that caused him to write that book. And then we have the CEO of Concerned Veterans for America, Pete Hegseth. He's also a Fox News contributor, and I'm telling you, every time we turn Fox News on anymore, just about, Pete is on it. He's kind of leading the way in so many areas of importance right now in our nation. So we are starting this tour this year for the Bigger and Better 2015 Defend Freedom Tour. We are kicking it off. Oh, I hate that picture. We're kicking it off in New York City.
Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, did you?
I did say, yeah, but thanks. Yeah. And there's going to be others. Oh, Buck Sexton's going to be with us at some of the stops. And on top of that, you guys, I'm telling you all this before I tell you the big surprise, because you need to know how impressive this lineup is. We have got Madison Rising, America's most patriotic rock band, on every single stop with us doing a rock concert. We have country music singer Ayla Brown on every single stop with us doing a concert. This is going to be a phenomenal thing. And this year, like I said, in the spirit of Bigger and Better, we are kicking it off with a 3-hour Fox and Friends.
Oh, really?
We are going to have all 3 hours of Fox and Friends, where Madison Rising and Ayla Brown are in the plaza there at Fox in New York City. And we are inviting the public to attend. Anybody that can get up there, come and join us. We're even going to serve breakfast to every single person that comes to the plaza that morning. So we're hoping for literally thousands of people. Oliver North won't be there, but I'll tell you who will be there. Jay Redmond will be there. If any of you know about Wounded Wear and Jay Redmond, his amazing story, he'll be there. And the rest of us that
Retired
are on tour.
Navy SEAL Jay Redmond.
Yes. And anyway, going to be a phenomenal morning. That is April 17th from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., 3 hours with Fox and Friends that morning, kicking it off. And now here's the great surprise.
Well, there's your tour schedule, too.
There's the tour schedule, and that was my surprise. You just gave it away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Because, no, you can pop that back up, because there will be not one, not two, but 3 stops in Florida this year.
Oh, my God.
And you can see it's 23 cities, but 3 of them are in Florida. We're going to be in Jacksonville on July 30th. We're going to be in Tampa on July 31st, and we will be in Fort Lauderdale on August 1st. And Billy was just down in Fort Lauderdale a couple weeks ago looking at venues. Can you remember the name of the place where we're probably going to be having it in Fort Lauderdale?
It's probably going to be, well, if CVA approves it, it's going to be at Parker's Theater. That's Parker Place. That's the place that we looked at.
Parker Place. So anyway, exciting times. Come out and join us. Like I said, what CVA is a movement joining veterans, families, and patriots across this nation. We're trying to make people lock arms, come out, join us, lock arms, and regain what we've lost in this country. If you try to tell me, a mother whose son died in Afghanistan, that the fight is over, I will be upset.
Yes.
We cannot believe that the fight is over. We have to believe that there's something worth fighting for, that a representative republic is the noblest form of government ever devised by man, and therefore demands protection, that 41 million U.S. citizens have served this nation during times of war, and that 1.3 million of those men and women have paid their last full measure on a battlefield, and it deserves protecting. That heritage deserves. And look, where are we going to go? When America's gone, where will we go? So that's my spiel about that.
That's fantastic. I agree with you 1,000%, Karen. You can't state that any more clear than that. And it really, I mean, coming from a person like you, it means even more. And it's just, I love the tour idea that you have going on. I'm highly impressed about all the stops, and that you're launching it on Fox is absolutely, fabulous and fantastic.
Also, really exciting thing this year is the NRA has joined forces with us, and they're going to be publicizing the tour. So we're hoping for thousands at each stop, and we are going to make an impact on this nation during the next upcoming, 5 months, I think.
Right.
We're going to make a difference. And we just encourage you to join us.
Absolutely,
It's going to be a big thing.
1,000%.
So I'm going to let I think Billy should introduce our next guest, because Billy made the original contact with these people, and I think that you just need to take it from here.
Thank you, Karen. Retired Staff Sergeant Brian Robinson, an American hero, served in Afghanistan, and his wife Tammy reached out to Karen and I last year in 2014. And we're certainly happy to have them with us today.
You want to bring? Yeah, we can bring them up right now.
Yeah, go ahead and bring them up. And I just got to tell you that I admire the courage, the strength, and the conviction that this family, that this couple has, that they have to speak with us today. And Tammy and Brian, are you all there?
I'm here.
Yep, I'm here, Billy.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Oh, pretty good.
Man, it's
Very
certainly
good.
good to hear from you. Brian, would you, if you don't mind, just give us a little background on who you are and as much as you want to talk about it, about where you served for our republic.
Yeah, no problem. Actually, I went in the Army in '87, got out in '92 after Desert Storm, came back in '07, and was medically retired in 2013. During that time, I served 15 months in Iraq from '07 to '09, right outside of Salt Lake City. And then 2010, 2011, I was deployed to Afghanistan, where I was in the Logar province. After that, medical reasons and combat kind of took a toll on me, so I was medically retired in August of 2013.
Okay, Sergeant. Now listen, folks, did you hear this was a guy who got out and then got back in when our nation was in the middle of fierce fighting? And I just want to say, you cannot believe how many people Karen and I run into that we cross paths with that are just like Brian here, who were out of the service, and then when the nation needs them, they volunteer to get back in. These are the Americans among Americans right here, folks. I mean, these kind of people that put their life on the line, that don't have to, that are not drafted, but go back in because their country needs them. And because of people like Brian and Tammy and these families, people like us who are sitting at home owe a lot to them to make sure they are respected, that they're honored, and they're taken care of after they come home. And even more than that, or as much, so does this government. So does this government. And by the way, these people fight for the Constitution and for the citizens of this United States, not for this United States government, but the government of the people, for the people, of the people, and by the people owes these people. And when these people are at home or whether they're abroad, our government must have their back. And Brian, if you don't mind, or Tammy, either one of y'all that want to just speak up, tell us how you feel today, if you don't mind, about the threats of ISIS to military families.
Well, I'll take that one. I've been speaking with several family members online that are current military or retired or veterans. And one thing I want to make really clear is they're not scared. They're angry. They're angry that the threat has come home.
Mm-hmm.
They're angry that it's credible threats.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I'm hearing from several people is because of the downsizing of the forces and so much privatization in the military with housing, with some of the jobs, where they've taken away MOSs and replaced it with civilian contractors, they don't feel secure on these bases and posts anymore. They don't know that their next-door neighbor, if their next-door neighbor is a military person or a civilian who just happened to be able to come in and rent the home next to them.
Oh, wow.
Used to, and at first, we heard rumors of this a while back when they started downsizing. I know Dover Air Force Base was probably one of the first ones to come in and do it, and it's pretty widespread now. Because instead of the priority being to take care of these family members and these service members on these posts, they have to make sure that these private companies hit their profit margins. I don't believe that should be a priority on our bases at all. It's allowing access where access should not be allowed. That's the first concern. The second concern is, they're told to take extra precautions. If you live off base, take all the decals off your vehicle. Don't decorate your yard with anything that's military. When you're going to work on base, go in civilian clothes and change once you get there. But then they'll go and they'll pull up the social media for their unit or their command, and there's all kinds of pictures and names and ranks and everything posted all over the social media. And I went and back through and looked at different things, and they're exactly right. So they don't feel like they're being taken care of in a manner that they should be.
Tammy, can I just ask a quick question here? I want to jump in and ask a question. You said you're angry, and that's what you're hearing from most people. If you don't mind me just diving here, because I know how Billy and I feel, who are you angry with? Where is the anger focused? Where do you think the finger gets pointed in this situation?
Oh, definitely on government.
Okay.
There was right after Obama got elected, there was a big push on post. And at that time, we were actually living on post. And before that, we would joke, the wives, because our husbands were deployed for almost 4 years, we would joke that we lived in one of the best gated communities in the United States, especially the post we lived on, because it was a booger getting on and off post. Everybody had to present an ID, and they were scanned, and they pulled over every second or third car. After that, they still did that, but all of a sudden they put these barriers in, and then they started closing gates down earlier in the day and stuff. And at first we're like, okay, they're just putting in an extra level of protection. But one wife, she was young, and she took a different perspective on it. She goes, okay, so are they keeping the bad guys out, or are they keeping us in? And it kind of made you step back for a minute and go, okay. The anger is pointed at our government, not our country, our government. Okay. There has just been such a big letdown. We take phone calls weekly from prior service members, from people that are still in, and they're upset, and they've got issues, and they have no place to turn and no place to go. And we'll do the best we can, but we're just two people. And a lot of times they get so frustrated because there are some great programs out there. But even with the VA and all these other programs, they feel like they have to jump through so many hoops and, produce everything except a vial of blood to prove who they are and what they've done. But they just get frustrated and give up. But the military, and that's what I love about military service members, they are a family. And they reach out to each other and they support each other. And they don't feel like the government has their back, either when they come home or I may overstep here, and my husband can chime in if I am. When they went to Iraq, that deployment, they felt like they had purpose. They knew what the mission was, and that was under a different administration. We'll say prior Obama. They had a mission. They had an objective. They knew what they were doing. They felt secure with their chain of command. When they went to Afghanistan, almost every single person that came back home felt helpless. They saw things that they didn't like. There was no comfort with their chain of command.
Sad. Tammy, folks, this is Miss Tammy Robinson, a military family, and the spouse of retired Staff Sergeant Brian Robinson. And Tammy, let me just say a couple things here. Yeah, you said that the military families are not afraid; they are angry, and we absolutely understand that. You said that the things that the bulletins have said about basically by taking your bumper stickers off your car, by changing out of your uniforms and things like that. And you said that the government does not have the backs of these families. Well, and in Iraq, you said you felt like the soldiers felt like the government had their backs. What we have seen, what we are seeing is, first, the Obama administration has not had the backs of these men who have served in Afghanistan. And then second, they've demonstrated to us that they do not have the backs of these families when they come home. Now, basically what they have told the military families, what we are seeing told to those families is what we are seeing the United States of America government do around the world. Surrender and keep your head down. Now here at home, the military families, after they've sacrificed, they're being told to keep their head down. After many families have given a loved one, they're being told to keep their head down.
And be vigilant.
Instead of, watch your own situational awareness. Instead of the mighty American government or the military Department of Defense standing up and saying, these people will be defended. These people are important to us. Don't even dare threaten these people. This government needs to pay for what they are doing to the military families and to our soldiers. And by the way, you keep on forcing these families. You keep on backing these families into a corner. You keep on pushing American citizens, Mr. Obama and Ms. Jarrett and your administration, you're going to get a pushback. And when you get a pushback, if you don't defend us against the enemies of this republic, at some point American citizens will defend themselves, Mr. President. And let me say just one other thing about this. Brian, Tammy, folks, can you imagine in September 12th, 2001, if al-Zawahiri, if Osama bin Laden, if Mullah Omar, and if al-Zarqawi from Iraq had all been in a room saying these are the goals we want to have by 2015. Can you imagine, could they have imagined in their wildest dreams they would be where they are today? America,
It made such an advance.
$18 trillion in debt, 7,000 dead American soldiers, American families being threatened here on the homeland.
Over 50,000 wounded.
Because the Obama administration has not done its job in securing the homeland and in supporting our allies and in having the backs of American soldiers. And not only that, Iraq, where so much blood and treasure was spent, where it was won, now lost. Now, and Christians being slaughtered in the Middle East like never before. Ancient Christian civilizations being torn down and the Middle East on fire with government after government that has been secure most of my lifetime, now turned upside down, now with a threat of a Sunni Shia war like we've never seen, now with the power players in the area, Iran and Saudi Arabia, now rattling sabers at each other. Mr. Obama has done a great job of putting this world and this republic in chaos. Sorry to talk so long there, but y'all have any comments?
Oh, Billy, I agree totally with you. Just like you said about them wanting to keep our heads down. I was one of the last units to leave Iraq after we trained the Iraqi army and the Iraqi police to hand over their country back to them. We left, and I told my wife when I got home, I said it's going to last about a year. And sure enough, it went right back to roadside bombings and everything else. All the lives, service members that were sacrificed, the money. Then I come back home, and I'm told, like my wife was saying, to keep my head low and, take the uniform off as soon as you can. I came back in after 15 years. I was 40 years old. I'm proud to wear my uniform. I was very proud.
Wow.
I love my country. but then they're telling me to bow my head down and, stay back in the shadows and this and that. And then, if you don't mind, I'd like to touch a little bit on Afghanistan, if that's all right with you.
Yeah,
Sure.
Brian, I was going to ask you that. And would you, if you don't mind, would you tell us about the Tangy River Valley, the area where Aaron, our son, was killed?
Can I just, before we go there, can I just say, Brian, that listening to a man in uniform, a man who has served this nation, we're in a completely different realm here. We never went and shed our own blood and sweat. We never sat over there and had bullets whiz by our head. We were here at home safe while men like you and men like our son went and fought. It is a completely emotional thing for me to hear him talking about being there and then coming home and being told not to wear your uniform. It literally makes me want to cry.
It's sickening. Let me say something to that, Brian. And here's the thing about it. Who you are, who American soldiers are, that's who many Americans are too. And we won't be told by a sissy, ridiculous, criminal government to keep our heads down and to hide. That's what I was trying to say a while ago. At some point, we are going to stand, and when we stand, because this government hadn't defended us, it will be worse than it was if they had done their job that they're trained to do for the American citizen.
And I'd like to add to what Karen was saying about the uniform. I can't stress that big enough, because when I was in the Navy, we went to the 4th of July. There's a little parable story. We went to the 4th of July, and the captain came on to 1MC and said, all right, everybody's required to wear their uniforms. Required to wear uniforms.
Wow.
Different mentality. And, well, of course, all the Navy sailors, we don't wear a uniform. But we walked out there on the 4th of July in Boston, and you're talking about the most, patriotic, and you felt proud. God, this is what it's like to be, a person in the military, and to be told on your own home ground in America that you cannot wear your uniform because of a bunch of ISIS people over there, radical Islamic people. It just irks you.
And I want to just add to this, what about the threat assessments that should be happening on all of your homes? Back when Aaron was killed, right after the Osama bin Laden raid, we've talked about this before on the show, and I don't want to take too much time on it, I'm sorry, but I want to finish this before we move to Afghanistan, because that's such a compelling story that you have. But, when the bin Laden raid was exposed, that it was the Navy SEALs who ran it, Aaron actually called home and said to me, Mom, wipe your social media clean. And get every reference of me or any of my buddies off of it. And his voice was nervous, grave concern. And I said, why, son? What's going on? Of course I will, but what's going on? And he said, Mom, there's chatter and your life is in danger. And I remember then thinking, how can this be real? How can people be threatening my life simply because my son serves this nation? And now here we are. Billy and I have been screaming about this for 3.5 years. And now here we are with a 100-member military hit list by ISIS, and this government is still doing nothing. And it makes me want to physically hurt someone right now. I can barely stand it.
Let me say this quickly, though. Mark, not to disagree with you about ISIS, because we've known who ISIS is. We've known who they are for 1,400 years.
Okay.
And it's not ISIS we need to blame because we're being threatened here on our homeland.
That's right.
Good point.
We know them. It's our administration we didn't know. We didn't know how big of an enemy they were toward this republic, and they are showing us every day. Brian, we really want you. By the way, folks, I said about Brian and the Tangy River Valley. This is where Tangy River Valley is where our son Aaron died, and Brian was a warrior in that area. Brian, just take it and talk about that if you will.
10th
please.
Mountain Division, right, Brian?
Yes, Karen. 10th Mountain Division. In the about the spring of 2011, late spring, we got a call. We were actually a QRF team, and there was a cop inside of a little base inside of Tangy Valley where our infantry was at, and pretty much every day they were getting RPG'd, lob bombs, you name it, it happened. So we were called in to move our fellow soldiers out of that place to a safer place 15 miles down the road to Syedabad, which was a bigger forward operating base. The stretch to go from the hardball all the way to the Kop Tangi was approximately 10 miles. It had mountains on one side and a river on the other side. So basically traffic can only go one way. Our job was to take the civilian Afghani workers, jingle trucks in, load up all our military gear, take it to Syedabad. Well, just to tell you how bad this road is, route clearance, which basically mine sweeps before we go in with our gun trucks, one day found 162 command-wired IEDs.
Wow.
And that was in one day. They would take care of them, but they wouldn't get them all. The minute we came back out, they'd go ahead and hook the wires back up. Pretty much it was a 10-day mission. Pretty much every day at least 2 or 3 IEDs went off. Excuse me. During that time, a lieutenant in another unit's truck got hit and he died. Once we got all our guys out of there, and this is the point I want to stress about, we were told by our higher ups, that the reason we were doing this, because once it was cleared, there would be a few people left behind for maybe a month, couple weeks, whatever, make sure everybody, American coalition forces were out of there, and then that place was a no-fly zone. No American forces were to be inside the Tangi Valley area.
Brian, can I interrupt you just a second and let me ask you, what was the date approximately that you're talking about?
That we cleared it?
Yes, that it was finished being cleared.
Actually, Tammy, I'm really bad with dates, Karen.
Okay, but it was weeks or months at the most before the shoot down of Extortion 17, right?
It was probably around April 2011.
Okay.
Because they cleared it, and literally the day he got back from that mission, he came home on leave, and I know he was home for Easter.
Okay, so 4 months before it had been deemed too violent.
I'd say probably 3, Karen. So it was plenty of time. The minute my truck was the last truck to leave on the last push to get our stuff out. The minute my truck left the fob, the insurgents overtook the fob. There was one truck left there. It was a medic, but they got out.
And FOB, to be clear for our listeners, is a forward operating base, just so they know what we're talking about here.
Right. No, I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
But like I said, the thing that irked me when I talked to you, you and Billy, is nobody was supposed to go in there. Nobody was supposed to fly over it. Why did the SEALs fly over it? And I know you explained it to me. That's why I was really freaked out when I heard about that, because another one of our QRF teams, after that incident happened, had to go in and cut up the schnook, obviously, retrieve the black box if it's there, and, get all our stuff out of there. So
Brian, basically, just to summarize what you're saying here, and like you told us earlier, and we're so appreciative for you and Tammy being brave enough to bring this story to light, but it was not only a no-fly zone. What I'm trying to say is, not only was nobody supposed to land in it, they weren't even supposed to fly over it. It was that dangerous. Exactly. But we took a 1960s model CH-47D chopper full of 38 men, 30 of which were American soldiers, 22 of which were from one of the most elite units in our entire armed forces, and we flew them into a hot landing zone inside this violent Tangi River Valley. That's what you're saying,
exactly.
Right? And you were stunned.
A question that I know you brought up, and Billy, why was the whole team on the Chinook together?
Right.
You don't do that. That's like putting all your first stringers on a huge piece of crap Chinook that is bigger than big, that a little Iraq or Afghani kid with an RPG could nail.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've heard senior executives drive this point home. They said, my gosh, we don't even put the president and vice president of Hewlett Packard on the same airplane because we don't want that much loss in, they fly in separate airplanes when they go to events together because they can't afford that type of loss. So yeah. And another thing that Billy and I have been talking about lately, and you could probably speak to this, is that when we were sitting in the debriefing as parents of one of the men killed in the shoot down, one of the fathers turned around or asked the panel of people, debriefing us, why did we not use a drone strike that night instead of flying those men in to capture one single man? This story is so multidimensional, but we're just going to focus on this right now. And, we're not saying whether drone strikes should have been used or not, but the answer we got, if we had gotten that answer today, there would have been a much more violent reaction. But they were telling us this, remember, just a month and a half after we found out our son was dead. So nobody really had the fortitude to react or even the mentality to understand what we were hearing. But when that father asked, why did we not use a drone strike that night, the three-star Admiral Robert Harward turned around, put his hand on my knee, and spoke to all of the wives and mothers and fathers sitting in that room and said, because we want to win their hearts and minds. And once I put that together with your story of how violently dangerous that zone was, that when the Rangers went in that night, they landed 2 miles south of the valley and walked in because they weren't going to fly a helicopter into that valley. But after a 3.5-hour firefight, we sent those men in. It just seems to me, the more pieces Billy and I have put together, the more dastardly this whole thing sounds, and that it cannot be just oversight or tactical error. How do you feel about that?
I agree totally. I understand what the government's talking about, hearts and minds, because it started in Iraq in late 2010 when I was still there. The ROE changed, and we're trying to
rules
win,
of engagement.
like you said, their hearts and minds, but they're putting us in harm's way when they're telling us about the ROE. One short story in Afghanistan, we had a breach in our outer wall, so we had to pull security on it. And I was sitting in an NCO meeting where the sergeant major said, if the insurgents show up and they point an RPG at your vehicle, you are not to engage until they engage you. And I stood up and said, that's wrong, because an RPG is going to take my truck out. If I feel that I'm in harm's way, they're pointing a weapon at me, they're going to get taken down. And they told me, nope, that is not the way this is going to work.
Good Lord.
Yes.
And this,
So,
and just let's just be clear, because the numbers prove out what you're saying. The numbers of the dead of the KIA in Afghanistan and the wounded in Afghanistan certainly back up exactly what you're saying, Brian. And we learned another thing that Karen and I learned.
The increase in those numbers.
Yeah,
after
the
we
increase in
implemented
those numbers
the
after.
hearts and minds.
And we need to be clear that the increase in numbers of Americans, KIA, and Americans wounded, how they rose astronomically after this administration implemented that strategy in Afghanistan. But one thing that we didn't learn until just this past year from a retired one-star in Afghanistan was that while those numbers of American soldiers, deaths and wounded, was skyrocketing because we were becoming less aggressive, trying to win their hearts and minds, if you will, the number of Afghan civilians, deaths and wounded, rose just like the deaths of American soldiers, skyrocketed. Because as we backed off and were less aggressive with the enemy, the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, became a lot more aggressive with the Afghan civilians. And so that's straight from the military. So the DOD knows it, the State Department knows it, the administration knows it. So again, you wonder, what is the agenda? We're losing more soldiers, they're losing more Afghans. What is the agenda of this administration?
I wish I knew the answer to that, Billy.
Yeah. Brian, did you
I
notice?
really do.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Did you notice this surge of violence against the Afghan people once you were pulled back? Did you get to see anything like that, or were you in a position to notice that specific thing?
Oh, when let me redo the question. You say when we saw,
when we
the
pulled
more hearts
back.
and minds to back off,
Right.
and yes, honestly, it was after I got back from leave. It was probably a couple months before we left. There was actually once we moved all our troops, like I said, out of Tangi into Fayyadabad. Probably a month after I got back from leave, somebody drove a VBIED, which is vehicle-borne improvised explosive device vehicle, right through the wall of Fayyadabad, and if I'm not mistaken, injured approximately 52 civilian and soldiers.
Wow.
I think the number was higher than that.
Yeah, I can't, because there were so many of the things happening. I know half of the wounded came to our FOB because we were a level 2 care center, and the other half went to Bagram Air Force Base. We started getting threats at our post from certain Afghan nationals that were giving us intel that our FOB was going to get overran. And actually, once I was back in the States, I can't remember the date, but the FOB I was at actually did get try to get overran. They bombed it, and but more than the normal, because we used to get RPGs sent into the FOB all the time. But yes, I did see a huge increase in the violence towards us for being there.
Right, because they
backed
perceive they perceive that weakness as a point of attack. I mean, that's the mentality of this savage, right? If you show them weakness, you are finished. Correct?
They're going to strike. They're going to strike, exactly, and that's why the rules of engagement, I can see were set out there, so you're not to be trigger happy.
Right.
But when you're telling me if we go through all the steps of ROE and we fire upon somebody, we're scared to death that we're going to get pinned up, discharged, thrown in jail. I mean, it's just nobody wants to pull the trigger anymore because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble.
And what does that hesitation do? What does that
result in?
I mean, that hesitation results in what, Brian?
Deaths to American soldiers.
Right. It results in flag-draped coffins coming back to families in America. And Tammy, if I can bring you in on this just a minute, our son is dead. I mean, the very worst happened to us. And as we find out in the aftermath how criminal the rules of engagement were that absolutely caused his death, I want to ask you as a wife, please know how much absolute respect I have for you and the position you have in serving this nation as the wife of a warfighter. I want to ask you how those rules of engagement make you feel, Tammy.
Oh, I was livid, absolutely livid. We developed a little code because our calls and emails and everything was monitored. So we would develop this little code to talk. And I could always tell him he was really upset. The day that your son was killed, had actually been traveling from Louisiana to Missouri to my granddaughter's birthday. And he called, and he was so upset. And the thing that bothered me most was he kept saying, remember everything I'm going to say, because I know it'll make me forget. And, we've kind of gone over that a little bit, and he has forgotten a lot of stuff. And just, and it wasn't so much him. I was so much older than a lot of the other soldiers. I was mom. So I would get messages and phone calls from them, and they were scared to death, especially the younger ones, in their late teens, early 20s. They were absolutely scared to death because they didn't know what was down the road. They had faith in their immediate chain of command, meaning their NCOs that they dealt with on a daily basis, but nothing beyond that.
Can I ask you this? Would it be fair to assess your feelings as a sense of betrayal?
Oh, extreme betrayal.
we send our sons and daughters, we send our husbands and wives, our mothers and fathers. Go ahead.
We don't send them.
Yeah, they go.
They go.
Right.
They
You're absolutely
volunteer.
right. They volunteer, but we sit behind, and the least we expect is that our government will do everything in their power to bring them back to us. And when we find out that they are being sacrificed for fear. I mean, to think, Billy has said this many times as we travel across the country speaking. Billy has made this comment many times. Lots of times we're a Christian family. Aaron was a child of God, received Christ at a young age, and had a solid faith in Christ. And lots of times when he'd come home and talk to his dad after deployments about things he'd been engaged in, Billy would sometimes think, son, was there maybe a better way you could have done that? Because we want to see people come to Christ. It's hard for us as Christians to the finality of death. But what Billy will say everywhere he speaks is those thoughts never left his brain and came out his mouth for one reason. And Billy, you can give that reason.
Well, it's because I didn't want my son in the middle of the night, some night when he's face to face with a savage enemy who values nothing that we do or that he did, to hesitate and think, Dad said this. And it, like you said a while ago, Brian, the hesitation cost him his life. But what has happened is our government, military JAGs, making rules over white linen tablecloths, sipping a glass of wine, never hearing the noise of battle, never watching the blood flow from their buddies' body, or never smelling the stench of war, or having a bullet whiz by their head, are writing the rules for our warfighters to die by. And I just got to say, Mark, how much time we have left?
About 9 minutes.
9 minutes. I just got to say another thing we've learned. And sir, we're on to you. We know that Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Rickard was involved that night that Extortion 17 was shot down. Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Rickard, who was promoted by this president shortly after Extortion 17 was shot down.
The most catastrophic loss of life.
Most catastrophic loss in our nation's war on terror. He was promoted to full colonel, and then shortly after that retired. Changed his name or his title. He now goes by Tom Rickard and resides somewhere around Clearwater, Florida. And sir, we're on to you. Sir, we're on to you, and we're going to find out what you had to do with it. And I'm just going to say one other thing. Mr. Obama, you know what? I'm ready for you. And I sure would like to sit down with your vice president, because I've never gotten over him outing the Navy SEALs that night. Go ahead, Karen.
Well, I have a couple more questions, and we're kind of running out of time, but I feel like we got just enough time to talk about two more things. We're talking about the rules of engagement and how they cause warfighters to hesitate. And Brian, you took the words right out of my mouth, because I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but Billy and I have been fighting fervently to get First Lieutenant Clint Lawrence out of Fort Leavenworth right now. Are you familiar with his story, Brian, Tammy?
Oh, yes.
Okay, Clint, I mean...
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay. Are you guys in this fight, too? Because this is the most unbelievably disgusting... and this is what our warfighters endure. And I'll tell my view of it, and then you can tell your view if you have any variance in that story. But Clint basically was put into Afghanistan in a very dangerous region, an area where his predecessor had just been killed by the same sort of attack that came upon his troops on a day back in 2012, I believe it was. And Clint was actually below a berm, could not see what his spotters could see. They were up on the rise, and they radioed down to Clint, who was over that platoon, and said, there were men approaching our position. They did not stop. They refused to stop for the Afghan safeguards that were in front of our position. They're coming through on a red motorcycle, which was notorious for scouters and IEDs, different kinds of what am I trying to say? When they kill themselves, what can I say?
Suicide.
Suicide bombers.
Suicide bombers.
Right. And they were approaching at a rapid speed, and Clint said, do you perceive them to be a threat? Basically, a conversation went on like this. He said, yes, we perceive them to be a threat. We think we need to take them out.
His men did.
So his men did. And so Clint said, go ahead and take them out. They opened fire, killed 2 of the 3 men. And now Clint is sitting in Fort Leavenworth because the 2 shooters, to gain immunity for being the shooters, testified against Clint. Material was withheld from Clint's trial. People in this country should be so
let's say
outraged
this,
about this.
Let's say this. Clint's sitting in prison, you said it many times, not because of the 2 shooters, but because Clint loved this republic enough to fight for it,
Right.
to go and serve it.
His
So
mother,
now he's
Anna,
in prison.
His mother, Anna, has said that Clint was the type of young man who would never have seen the inside of a prison had he not chosen to serve his nation.
Under this commander-in-chief.
What's your take on it, Brian Tammy?
Excuse me. My take on it is he did everything that he was supposed to do by the book. They're coming at him rapidly. We were told the same thing you said, Karen, the motorcycles are the worst. And as long as this war's been going on, the Afghan nationals, whatever, they know if they're coming up upon a checkpoint, anybody they are to stop, or back in the day they would be shot upon. But now since the rules of engagement have changed, they're like, hey, what the heck?
Mm-hmm.
So they came in, the spotters said it was a threat. They tried to get them to stop. The last part of the rules of engagement are shoot. Okay?
Right.
He did everything he was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
But like we were talking earlier, with the way ROE is, you hesitate to make that decision. You call it up. You're calling it up to the top, which is, the main central where all the brains are sitting up there making decisions because they've never been out the wire before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
By
And
that
how-
time, you've already taken up 3-4 minutes. Especially if
You're
the
dead
comms
by
bad.
then. You are
Comms
dead
for the
by
worst in
then.
Afghanistan. You have to make that decision yourself.
And then
He
you
made the
need
right
to trust
decision.
that your government will freaking stand behind you when you do it. Is that not fair?
Oh,
This is-
exactly.
this is what we
you're
need to give our
saving
war
lives.
fighters.
You're saving lives. You're saving the lives of your men. And then as soon as you do it, bam, the government kicks you in the ass and says we're going to
That's
put you in
right.
jail.
We need to give
Oh,
our
sorry
war
about that.
fighters
How dare they?
the benefit of a doubt. And
Always.
what I'm saying about President Barack Obama is he ought to have to sit down in a room with Gold Star families and with war fighters who have gone and sacrificed so much and come back and seen him lose what they accomplished and defend his positions, and he can't. But if he can't defend his positions, he needs to be marched out by legal law authorities, and he needs to be out of that office. That's what this republic needs.
And then here's how this man
This
seeks
clown.
to
This clown.
seeks to further demoralize our men and women who serve in our United States military so bravely is he releases 5 terrorists who have American blood on their hands while Clint Lawrence and others
Yeah.
like him sit in Fort Leavenworth rotting their youth away. 19 years. I can't even hardly bear
Release
talking
5.
about.
Release 5 from Gitmo and put 1 in Leavenworth. Hey, that's such a great deal.
Or
Yeah, it is.
let's just talk about. I wanted to talk about this. We've got about a minute and a half, but what are your feelings on the Army coming out and saying that they finally are going to charge Bo Bergdahl with desertion?
Well, with desertion, excuse me, in a time of war comes death.
There you go.
Yep. Mhm.
That's
Good-
cut
good
and dry
point,
ever
Brian.
since
Yep.
I came into the Army in 1987. And my father before me and all the people that served, if you desert during a time of war, the penalty is death.
And you got the New
Is that
York
going to get carried out?
and
I
you
doubt it.
get the New York Times out there saying, "Well, he should get an honorable discharge." What? Are you kidding me? Are you serious?
No.
And gets the White House reception, and I am absolutely convinced that our president was completely aware of who this young man was when he made that exchange and when he honored his family, who spoke in Arabic from the White House lawn. I still don't know what that was all about. I'm sure their son had not forgotten English in that short period of time, but man, you talk about open season on the good guys. Man, we're living it right now. And we'll just wrap this up. We've only got about 15 more seconds left, but I just want to say from my standpoint, Brian, Tammy, you guys are true American heroes. We are honored to call you our friends, and we are so thankful to be in this fight beside noble patriots like you. I thank God for people like you.
Brian, Timmy, I can't think of anybody that we'd rather have with us today. Thank you.
Absolutely. God bless you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Keep it up.
Thanks.